Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and this is going to be my summary of the 2022 Las Vegas Challenge. I will not normally be doing these indoors. I actually shot this out at the course, and it was freezing, and so I was talking really fast, and when I listened to it on the drive back, it wasn't good. So I went with plan B. Sit in front of a fireplace, get warm, and then take my time and talk about the things I want to talk about, because there's a lot to unwrap here. So, in my summaries, these are my recap. My recaps are about me, my strategy, my game, how I did. But the summaries of the tournaments aren't about me. They're going to be about the tournament itself, the FPO, the MPO, and the tournament. Unless, of course, I'm at the top of the MPO, then it will be about me. But I will talk about myself in the third person like a real athlete. But that didn't happen this weekend. Not even close. All right, so start with the FPO. I think this is clearly the best time ever in the history of our sport to be in the FPO division and to be a fan of the FPO division. I mean, the women's division has blown up. It's probably the biggest change in the sport since I came back is what's happened to that division. And the reason it's exciting right now, well, among many other reasons, but one reason it's exciting is because when the field was smaller, it really tended to be just dominated by somebody. You know, Elaine King had her run, and Julianne had her run. Brigitta from Sweden, had she been over here touring, probably, she would have had a run too. Val, Des, players had their run. And during their run when they lost, they typically would lose to one of those other players who had a run before or after them. There was some overlap. But there was a gap. And this does not mean there weren't other good players. There were many good players out there. But there was a talent gap that comes from a smaller sample size. When I came back to the sport in 2014, it had changed in a very exciting way because there were 4 players on top. There was Paige, of course, and Katrina, but also Sarah Hokum and Val was still playing. And if the 4 of them competed in a tournament, they're probably on the lead card, right? Again, good players, but there was a gap. But you didn't know which one of them was going to be on top. Even if Paige was, maybe outplaying them more often than not, there were 4 players competing. You didn't know who was going to win. Not even close. Multiply that by 20 right now in the FPO division. At this tournament, the 2 best players in the world, Katrina Allen and Paige Pierce, finished 1 and 2. So no surprise, number 1 and 2 finished number 1 and 2. Hats off to Katrina. She played great all weekend. She struggled a little bit, but she pulled it together at the end. She putted well, and she made the birdie on hole 18 to win by 1 over Paige. But that's not the story. Because it wasn't that long ago that Paige and Katrina, not that they were going to win every weekend, but if either of them or both of them brought their A game, going to be really tough to beat. That's not the case anymore. They're still the 2 best players in the world. But right now, if they bring their A game to a tournament, there are many FPO players that can bring their A+ game. I mean, Evelina and Kristen and Haley played great this weekend, but Kona, Lisa, Sarah still got game. Jennifer Allen is going to shock some people this year, and the list goes on. And so it's not a foregone conclusion who's going to win in the FPO this year. And that is really exciting because I'm a fan of the division, and as a fan, you want parity. So we still got our 2 big stars, but, I mean, it's razor thin between them and the rest of the field. It's going to be fun to watch. So I think the entire FPO division is winning right now. In the NPO, I'm not going to talk about the field. I'm just going to talk about 2 players because really it was a 2-player tournament. It was Gannon Burr and Drew Gibson. Doesn't mean that a lot of players didn't play well. A lot of players, shot hot. But they were the class of the field this weekend. Gannon Burr Well, first let me give a recap of what happened in the final round. So Gannon Buhr had been leading for, I think, several days. And he led out throughout the entire final round, and he's up by a couple strokes with a couple holes to go. Drew smashes a drive, makes the birdie on hole 17 to pull within a stroke. On hole 18, they both throw great shots on one of the best finish holes I've ever seen. The reason it's a great finish hole is you can have a two-stroke swing on this hole. More than likely one, but two is possible. It's what a good finish hole should be. It's not a foregone conclusion. So Drew steps up a stroke behind, but with a chance to win still. And he throws a perfect shot. He puts it right between the two out of bounds, leaving himself a pretty routine approach shot. By the way, when I say routine, I mean routine if it was league night. There's nothing routine to win a major tournament. So it's not that it was routine, but he put himself in a very good position for a shot he has executed tens of thousands of times in his life. Pressure's on Gannon. Gannon steps up and doesn't play ultra conservative. He plays moderately aggressive, smashes his drive, lands safe as well, not too far behind Drew. His approach shot, this is probably the one he's going to be looking back at, because there's no such thing as an easy shot when the tournament's on the line. That doesn't exist. But I think it's one that he probably feels like he should have executed. I don't know how far it was, 250, 280. I'm guessing. If I get it wrong, forgive me. OB, right, left, and long, but also uphill. So he had a little bit of a backstop to throw into, and he just threw just an inch too long. Could have stayed safe, and he wins the tournament. A couple inches too long, goes out of bounds. Drew steps up with a chance to put it under the basket, not to win, but to force Gannon to make a tester putt to go to a playoff. Drew steps up, peers it right out of the basket. Gannon steps up, clutch, slams his putt. They go to sudden death. Sudden death, they both step up to the first hole. They both are inside the circle, but near circle's edge, which are not gimmies. I don't care what the stats say at the end of the tournament. Now we're talking sudden death. Drew steps up first, throws it in. Gannon steps up, calm and cool, drops it in. Next hole, Drew parks it. Gannon is right at circle's edge, steps up again, calm, cool, and collected, bangs his putt. Third hole, Drew throws a perfect drive. He's not playing as aggressive as he was in the finals, but a perfect drive. Put himself in position to have a really, nothing routine, but a pretty good shot at an up and down. Gannon throws a bad drive, hits a tree early, and is stuck with a hard sidearm. Yeah, I don't know what it was, 370, something like that, probably 380. But with OB short, OB right, OB longish on the side of a hill, how do you land it? A couple inches too high, it's out of bounds. A couple inches too low, it can click, turn up and roll away. 300, probably 70 feet. He steps up, throws a sidearm. I was so proud to see the sidearm executed, and just literally flawless. Puts it under the basket. Push to the next hole. Now, in sudden death, I noticed, and I didn't realize this had changed, but they were alternating who tees off first, which is really important, because on courses with a lot of OB, there's such an advantage to going second, and luck of the draw. But that's the situation that happened on the fourth playoff hole, because it's an incredibly difficult shot. You have OB to the right, you have OB to the left, you have OB long, and OB short's not as in play, but you have OBs. Now they're bunkers. Right and left is a bunker, which means you take a stroke, but you have a putt, which means if you're in the bunker with your stroke, you could still have about as good as maybe a 12-foot putt at best, but a 40 or 45-foot putt at worst with a stroke. Gannon steps up first, pulls it a little bit wide, throws it in the bunker. Now, he had a reasonable putt. He probably had a 35, 40 footer for his three. So no guarantee that Drew can just play safe and win. Drew made a calculated decision and decided that he's going to take the fairly routine three, lay up short of the OB green, leave himself a jump putt to put under the basket, force Gannon to make the putt. And I really like the strategy, and here's why. The way Drew played it, he had nothing to lose, everything to gain. Worst case scenario, they tie. Gannon makes his putt. Best case scenario for Drew is Gannon misses his putt, but it was a zero loss situation where if he had went for it, boy, I think he would have second guessed himself. I think mathematically, I think it was a smart play. I think Drew did it right. Not because it worked, but with foresight, I think he made the right call. So he throws his shot and perfect, just short of the green, jump putt, not perfectly under the basket, but like 10 or 12 feet long. Gannon steps up and hits the top band on his 40-footer. Drew taps in for the win. And first off, thank you guys. I mean, what a show. Getting to watch it live is so exciting. Watching golf at that level, I mean, in sudden death, they both went birdie, birdie, birdie for the first 3 holes of sudden death on a hard course where double digits is good. I mean, that was what you hope for. I mean, it was getting cold, so I was kind of hoping they would wrap it up because I'm an old man and I was getting the chills. But from a fan's perspective, like, they put on a show. So I want to talk about each of them individually because first off, Gannon Buhr, 16 years old. Okay, it's an overused expression that someone has ice water in their veins. I mean, that's stupid, right? Obviously, if you had ice water in your veins, you would just die. You have blood in your veins. It's just a metaphor or whatever, analogy or whatever you want to call it. Just means that you're calm and cool under pressure. You don't actually have ice water in your veins, except for Gannon. I am fully convinced if he had tripped and cut himself, that ice water would have come out. That kid is so cool. It's practically unnerving. I'm going to make a very strange comparison here, but in a weird way, it was almost like when let me date myself, watching Mike Tyson at a press conference, where you're just watching someone that is just so cool that I think it could make people nervous. It's not intentional. He's a nice kid. He's not playing mind games. He's just that cool. And I mean, this is, believe me, he's going to have a million wins in his career. But yeah, hats off to him. I mean, scary good. Scary good. He's just as good in person as he is on video. So thumbs up, Gannon. Drew Gibson is the seasoned pro. Like, at this point, he's not the young guy on tour, even though everyone seems young to me. In fact, I call them all kids. But Drew, first off, he's the consummate professional. He's got maybe the best form in the game. If not, it's up there. I mean, he's so, like, everything is so tight the way he plays. Like, he's not going to mess up the easy shots. I mean, he's just routine on the shots you have to hit, and then he smashes big shots as well. But I will tell you a quick funny story about Drew. And the details aren't important. Don't even ask me. I'm not even going there. But basically, one of the things when I got to know Drew about 6 or 7 years ago, when I came back to the sport, I wasn't sure how to market myself. I was trying all these different approaches, trying to get my name out there. And one of the things I did, Drew wasn't a fan of. And I'm sure a lot of players weren't fans of. And it wasn't that important to me because I'm promoting me and my brand, right? I mean, I had an agenda, a business agenda for what I was doing. Nothing malicious or harmful, I felt, but I was doing stuff my way. He didn't appreciate it. He didn't think it was good for disc golf. And so we were in Missoula, Montana, and he grabs me and pulls me aside and says, "I don't like what you're doing." He says, "I like you. I'm your friend. Don't like what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing this. It's not good for disc golf." Now, whether or not I agreed with him is not relevant to how I feel about the fact that he did that, because what he did was he stepped up for something that he believed in, felt it was appropriate to get his say in, and he did. He was inviting potential confrontation. He was inviting me potentially not liking him. All sorts of things when someone does something like that, but he felt it was important, and I respected him for that, and I still respect Drew for that. I think the world of him, and I think he's going to have a great season. So Drew put it together, did everything he needed to do, completely clutch, and won the tournament. So hats off to Drew. I'm a huge fan. Now, about the Las Vegas Challenge. Wow, where do we begin? The tournament director, Jeff, like, just knocked it out of the park. You know, I've said mind blown on a bunch of videos this week. Mind blown. I don't know what the whole Pro Tour is going to be like. I have no idea what they're going to look like. So I don't want to say best or things like that. I would say this, the DDO is about the only tournament that I would say, like it's equal, which doesn't mean better or worse. It means the best our sport has to offer. What I felt like in Las Vegas was what I wanted to feel like my entire life at a disc golf tournament. I wanted to feel like a professional athlete. I wanted to feel like a PGA professional. And that's the way they made us feel. From the moment you drove into the parking lot, top notch. If you walk up to Jeff and tell him what a great tournament it is, or it was, the first thing he's going to tell you is, I had 150 volunteers. Like, he is deferring credit to the volunteers, which is such a class act. They're volunteers, right? What's impressive isn't the number of volunteers. The number of volunteers is impressive. What's impressive was every single one of them had a job. They knew their job. They knew exactly what they were supposed to do, exactly where they needed to be. They knew exactly where to stand to not get in the way of the players. They knew exactly how to tell you that you had out of bounds and then be out of the way. They knew how to get people off on their holes and go over the rules. They knew where the spectator areas were as they were playing the finals with the huge gallery to make sure that everybody was in a place, so the players had a place to play. But without that organization, it would have been chaos. Like, it would have been chaos with somebody yelling, oh, stand over here. Hey, you're in the fairway. Hey, you guys move it. No, these guys were like, boom, 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 boom. Perfect. There's no words to describe how good they did. Everything was marked. Everything was professional. Signs, banners, clubhouse, sponsorship money, the media that came out. And now we're starting to go into the Disc Golf Pro Tour territory, which, of course, they get the credit too. And I don't know Las Vegas crew versus Disc Golf Pro Tour, who gets credit for what. So I apologize if I give credit to the wrong team on this one, but you both all deserve the credit. Everyone just crushed it. I felt like a professional athlete this weekend. Didn't play like one, but I felt like one. It's a very special moment for me. Very special. Everyone, thank you from the bottom of my heart for making me feel this way, making this dream come true for all of us that have been trying to make this sport into something for the past, since the Healy brothers in the late 1950s in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. A+. Vegas doesn't get an A, it gets an A+. If this is what the season has in store, it's the best decision I've ever made in my entire life to be out here and to get to be a part of this. It's really special, and I really appreciate everyone. Final shout out to the sponsors. End of a Champion Discs has done so much for the sport, and they continue to do so much for the sport. There were other sponsors as well. I apologize if I try to rattle them off. I'm going to leave sponsors out, but I know that Innova was a big one. So thank you to them, and just thank you to everybody. Had the time of my life, and I'm going to win Waco. Well, that's my plan anyways. Thank you, everyone. Las Vegas Challenge, A+, period. Thank you.